Welcome into another edition of Sunday Flags. I am your host, Mason Kinnahan, and once more, as you can see, Luke Brown is not joining me here tonight, but we've still got a very big tournament to preview, and it's March. It's major. That's what they say. Because the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass is this weekend. No, some people call it the fifth major. Some people don't necessarily call it the fifth major, but we've still got a tournament to cover, and a pretty big one at that, because it's the flagship tournament for the PGA Tour. And when you look at, the PGA Tour schedule and kind of where things currently stand, this was a pretty big week for the PGA Tour. Oh, this is going to be a pretty big week, because this morning we had Brian Rolapp's kind of State of the Union press conference that came from, the PGA Tour headquarters in Jacksonville, not at TPC Sawgrass, which is, not the normal, not what they usually do. But anyways, it was a big State of the Union address where over 1,000 employees showed up for Rolapp's speech. Plus, of course, media were there to ask questions and whatnot as well. So we're going to start with that, talk about some of the major takeaways from Rolapp's speech, because we've got a lot of great information, maybe not as much as we were hoping for in terms of official announcements, but we've got a lot of great information to go over in terms of, what Rolapp said, what is coming up in the future for the PGA Tour. So we'll jump into that in a second. And then, of course, we're going to be previewing TPC Sawgrass this week at the Players. We're going to go over some predictions as well. Luke got his predictions into me. He's not here. We mentioned it in the previous episode, but he's going to Alabama. So he'll be at Alabama for the D3 track and field national championship. So he'll be in Birmingham over there, but we still got a pretty big tournament to preview here on the show. So we'll start with Brian Rolapp. Rolapp, of course, announced as the new CEO of the PGA Tour back in June. And Rolapp, in his first, it's March now, so 9 months? He's been very aggressive in what he's done. He's said a lot of things. He's said that, he wants to see a lot of change for the PGA Tour. And so far on the PGA Tour, we've seen some significant changes already, right? And a lot of, potential changes in the future as well. We were kind of hoping for, some pretty big announcements heading into this press conference surrounding the schedule and what it would look like in 2027. Of course, Rolapp has mentioned in past talks that he wants a shortened schedule, but a schedule that has more meaningful events than it does currently. So what does he kind of mean by that? Well, he dived into, what the season structure may look like for the foreseeable future. Now, it sounds like a lot of these changes aren't expected to come now until 2028. So it sounds like 2027 will have a pretty, at least regular season-wise, a pretty, similar schedule to what it has currently. But again, there are quite a few sponsors that have their sponsors sponsorship contracts up this year. So there are going to be still some questions surrounding some fields like the Sony Open, the Farmers Insurance Open, and I think John Deere as well is up after this year. So a lot of things to kind of look at. But for Rolapp's proposed season structure, he's talking about a late January to early September season. The season starts on the West Coast, so that he gets primetime golf for people on the East Coast on finishes and things like that. He's looking at 21 to 26 total events on the calendar. Currently, of course, there's about 30 to 35. I can't remember the exact amount. So cutting it down by about 10 or so events, but looking to double the number of signature events than there are currently. Now, of course, signature events and how they kind of are proposed right now. There's 8 of them on the calendar. About, I think, just over half of them don't have cuts. Maybe half of them don't have cuts, and then half of them have kind of these, fake cuts where top 50 and ties advance to the weekend, but also I think everyone still makes money. It's a little odd, but he's looking to double the number of signature events, which when I heard that at first, I was getting a little worried, because a lot of these signature events, have shortened fields, have smaller fields, and I'm not, a fan of these smaller fields. I like, having full field events with cuts and everything. So then he goes on to talk about the field structure, and I like this a lot, because he said that he wants to aim for 120 player fields, which is, about what maybe a little bit less than what a normal event is currently. Like a full field event, I think is around 140 or so. So a little bit less than that, but a lot more than what a current signature event is, which holds about 70, I think 70, 75 players, which is not a lot of golf. So I think I like this 120 player field proposal. On a lot of these events, it sounds like he wants a lot of this 21 to 26 total events. 16 of those being signature events. So, he's talking about going to major markets for these signature events. New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C. have all been rumored as potential cities for future big, PGA Tour events. I know Chicago has, I think, TPC Twin Cities, but what is that? The 3M Open, I think, is that one. So again, that's not a big event on the calendar currently. So there's still a lot to, look at in terms of where some of these newer events could potentially be. Now, when we get to the postseason, this is where I think some of the bigger announcements came from Rolapp today, or at least more of the eye-opening announcements that reporters kind of pointed out. Postseason structure was pretty big. He said he's evaluating promotion, relegation, things like that. He's talked a little bit about having a PGA Tour A and a PGA Tour B. Again, I don't know what this means in terms of Korn Ferry Tour. Where does that play in things like this? And where does, how are golfers going to be able to get promoted and get relegated? And how many golfers, will be playing? Are there going to be 3 tours, or is it going to be like 2 tours and then they're getting rid of Korn Ferry? Not exactly sure, but I know some golfers that are probably towards the top in terms of, skills and rankings, things like that, are going to enjoy this, while some golfers, I think, that are, the current Korn Ferry Tour guys are probably not going to like this new approach or new potential approach that Rolapp was suggesting. He also talked about match play on postseason events, which was a really interesting idea that, has been suggested by a lot of PGA or golf Twitter and golf, podcasts over the last year or so. Because let's face it, the postseason now, it's not good. It's really not good. And now that you're not having the strokes, I don't know what you call it, the starting strokes at the Tour Championship, it really just feels like another event. Now, I get not wanting to have starting strokes in your Tour Championship. I totally understand that, right? And getting rid of that is good on its own. But the way the format is set up currently, where you're accumulating FedEx Cup points throughout the entire season, and then the person that's first and the person that's 30th, you're kind of at the same level in the Tour Championship. I don't know how much I like that currently, right? So match play, I think, would be huge. The only concern I have about match play is that that's not something we see throughout the regular season. It's a completely different thing, a type of, golf than what we see in the regular season, where it's, just stroke play. So that's the only slight concern I have about match play, it being, the postseason for PGA Tour. But on its own, I love it. If you had to say, should I want match play or what they have currently, I would pick match play 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100, because that means that you're going to get these win or go home moments that Brian Rolapp was talking about, and that's huge, because currently the only things that are the only real entertainment we have currently in the postseason is the bubble, right? And you have the 4 times FedEx Cup points, right, for the FedEx St. Jude, for the BMW, heading into the Tour Championship. So you have those 4 times FedEx Cup points, which kind of creates more of a bubble in terms of players getting into the top 50 and then the top 30. And of course, the Wyndham and things like that, those events right before the FedEx Cup playoffs, you try and see who's on the bubble getting into the top 70, right, for the FedEx St. Jude. But beyond that, there's really no pressure put on like stars or put on, on shots, really. because it's a very complicated process, FedEx Cup points, and it's really hard to understand unless like you're a really big golf fan, how the FedEx Cup works, right? And how those points kind of come and go. You get the general idea, but it's hard to keep track of. Even though they have that tracker up there for the bubble, it's really hard to keep track of what needs to happen and things like that. So I think match play would be great. Match play is a lot easier to understand for the average fan, and you can create these moments where you have, let's say, Rory or Tommy Fleetwood, right? Tommy Fleetwood in his first round is going up against, I don't know, a Nikolai Højgaard, right? And all of a sudden, Højgaard is up one with 3 to play. That's Fleetwood's on the brink of being upset early on in the tournament. That brings a lot of energy. There's a lot of things going on, and it's really entertaining to see. If Fleetwood can pull through. And if Højgaard has a great 18 holes, he can pick up the upset win. And I think that would be great. So, you get these, it reward the top guys more, right? Because you would have the Scotties and the Roys and guys like that playing against the 30 seed, the 29 seed. Again, it won't exactly work like that with the format. You probably have to have, right, like 32 golfers getting into the Tour Championship hypothetically for a match play event, and then let's say those 32 codes 16, 8, 4, etc. You'd have the 1 seed Scotty versus whoever the 32 seed is, and so on. So I think it would just bring a lot of great entertainment, and also just bring more action in general for not only the more diehard golf fans, but also just for the average fans and the casual fans as well. So I really like the idea of match play, and I think Rolapp's, if he goes with match play here for the FedEx Cup playoffs, I'd be all for it. Some other quotes that I found really interesting. The amount of times Rolapp mentioned fans was huge. I felt like, because that's not something that we've seen in the past. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here. I think it was Patrick McDonald who posted about this. The sports business is not that hard. Or this is what Rolapp said, quote, "The sports business is not that hard. Just think like a fan, and 9.5 times out of 10, that's the right answer." When you look at what Monahan and the Monahan reign and all of that on the PGA Tour, how many times did Monahan mention, the partners, the sponsors, right, of the PGA Tour before he ever mentioned like the fans, the people who watch the sport, the people who, care about the sport probably the most, that you should be, like building your sport around. So just Rolapp talking about, fans and fandom and all of that and what the fan would do is just such a refreshing mindset and mindset pretty much on just who's in charge of the PGA Tour at this point. I got a lot of I was a little cautious going in because I felt like heading into this press conference, Rolapp's kind of like the shiny, he was like the shiny new car that just got, that you just got, but all of a sudden, right, the shine starts to wear off on Brian Rolapp. And, even the rumors were coming, were rumbling the last couple of days about, it really sounds like Rolapp is not going to be able to announce anything big at the Players. And I was doubting it. I really was. And yeah, were there no official announcements on anything? Yeah, there weren't. But Rolapp controlled the podium really well. I felt like he gave some great answers that, to the best of his ability, right? Because he can't do anything currently, but he's saying the right things, which before that wasn't the case. So Rolapp saying the right things is a step in the right direction. I know we haven't actually seen this new shortened schedule or more premium schedule along with all of these other new additions that Rolapp wants to bring yet, but he is saying the right stuff, and his mindset seems to be in the right place for the average fan, and that is huge in my opinion. So that's great. So we'll see again how this kind of goes over the next few months. It sounds like more announcements are to come in June. There's some board meeting for the PGA Tour in June, and Rolapp's going to talk after that. So expect more announcements then, maybe potentially right before the U.S. Open or so. So we'll have to wait for that. But, I felt like Rolapp, for not announcing anything official, did the best he could today. And that's great in my opinion, because he gave some really good answers. And yeah, basically was saying a lot of the right stuff for a guy like me, who's watching the game and wants to enjoy it to the fullest extent. So yeah, that was kind of thoughts on Rolapp and all of that. But we've got a tournament this weekend, and a really, really big one, because the flagship tournament for the PGA Tour, the Players Championship at TPC Sawgrass, is taking place tomorrow morning. TPC Sawgrass, just over 7,300 yards, par 72, one of the most iconic kind of golf courses, in modern history. A lot of great moments, a lot of great champions at this event: Tiger, Rory, Scotty. So it's going to be a really fun weekend and a really fun tournament to watch. Of course, heading in, the message was March is going to be major, right, with the Players. And, the Players, they want to turn it into a fifth major and all that, which Rolapp actually spoke about it a little bit today. He said he can't really control what a major is and what it's not. And I thought that was a great answer as well. He's like, I don't really, he didn't say he didn't care if the Players was viewed as a major or not, but he said it's not in his control. And I thought that was a good answer. Now, I don't know why they were promoting. I guess they weren't promoting the Players as a major. They were just saying it was going to be major, which it was a good marketing, strategy and all that. But still, not exactly a major yet. He also mentioned that there's no plans anytime soon to get live guys in this field. So again, if you want it to be a major, you'd want to have the live guys in here. And the PGA Tour's flagship event, that's just not where they're at. Not where they should be at either. So I agree. I kind of agree with that decision as well. Let's get to the tournament itself, though, and the course, because the course has been a big topic of discussion over the last week. This kind of idea that the TPC Sawgrass and the Players is going to be a major. What does that mean for the course conditions? Over the last few years, we've seen this course play pretty easy. Scotty winning at 20 under or so a couple of years ago. Rory, I think, was at 12 or 15 under as well last year. So when you look, I think it was 15. But I think this course is going to be pretty hard, or at least harder than usual this weekend. They have been growing out the rough a ton. And Rolapp said there's no plan, or maybe it was a course director said that there's no plans to cut the rough before the event. The rough was about 4 inches, I think some were saying, from last weekend. And now they've been growing it out even more. You better be accurate off the tee. I'll just say that, because if you get the ball in the rough, similar to last week at the Arnold Palmer at Bay Hill, right? We saw how much of an impact the rough had on players, especially a guy like Daniel Berger, right? On hole 18 especially, right? Where he was inaccurate off the tee and then kind of had to lay up almost on both of his second shots. So you better be accurate off the tee to, win this tournament. All right. I don't think a guy like Akshay, who is going to, or like a performance like Akshay's last week, is going to win this week's tournament at TPC Sawgrass. So that is going to be really interesting to see how bad is the rough, because I think it's going to be pretty bad. Also, the greens, they seem very firm. They're not overwatering them or anything to make them softer. The rain held off. I think it rained on Saturday or Sunday, but the rain has held off throughout the course of this week. It seemed like maybe we get some rain on Sunday or later in the weekend, but for now, these greens are dry. These greens are hard. It's going to be hard to get it close to the hole and settle your approach shots, especially with some of these long irons as well that you're going to have to send into some of these really tiny and tough hole locations to get to as well. So approach play, like always at TPC Sawgrass, is going to be a key as well, and definitely something to monitor. But yeah, I talked about the weather a little bit, mostly clear. It's going to be Wednesday. It's going to be windy Thursday morning. Could get some rain on the back end of the weekend, like I mentioned. It seems like there could be some gust in Thursday afternoon, Friday morning. So if you have a afternoon, morning tee time, for Thursday afternoon, Friday morning tee time, could be in a little bit more trouble than the morning wave on Thursday. And then also, I think I can't remember the exact stat, but I believe majority of the winners in the last few years have come from the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon waves. So keep that in mind as well when I guess when you're picking your one and dones and things like that. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think the course itself is going to play a lot harder than it has in past years, and I hope I don't get disappointed because, yeah, if you want the players to play like a major, this is what you're going to have to do. Because currently, Bay Hill is the number one course, in my opinion, on the PGA Tour that plays like a major, and TPC Sawgrass hasn't really in the past. It's gotten pretty easy for these guys. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how they make this course harder. All right, get into some of the players or the golfers who are playing in the players. We'll start with Rory McIlroy, world number 2. He arrived to Sawgrass today. It sounds like he is a game time decision, he says, to play tomorrow or for his tee time tomorrow. He's about I'm recording this at 8:30, so he is about I don't know 12 hours or maybe he's got an afternoon tee time, so 1:30 ish start for him tomorrow, but going to be really interesting. He said he's probably a game time decision. Says his back injury, it's better than it was. I hit up to a 6-iron on the range and it felt okay. I have about 20 hours until I'm supposed to tee off. That he said this again around 4 o'clock or so on the East Coast. So yeah, we'll see. I'm sort of taking it hour by hour, but it feels better. That's all I can say. I couldn't stand to adjust the ball Saturday morning on the range at Bay Hill, and it's obviously better than that. Yeah, probably game time decision, but all indications are pointing in the right direction. So hopefully a good night tonight. The drugs are working wonders, and then just keep it going from there. It sounds like he's playing. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he withdraws just because I think there are bigger things on his mind. He is speaking next week at the Masters reigning champion press conference, something like that, next week. The Masters is in 1 month, and that is the tournament that he really wants to defend. Yeah, the Players is cool, and yeah, he won it last year as well. But he's really looking ahead at Augusta, and if he rushes back from this back injury and re-injures himself this weekend, and he can't play Augusta, that's bad. That's really bad. So right now, reading what he said to the media today, sounds like he's going to be okay and play. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know. I would not be surprised if we wake up and he WDs either. So a lot on the line from Mr. Rory McIlroy. Once more, if he does play, he's unlikely to play practice rounds before tomorrow. Todd Lewis of Golf Channel reported that on Tuesday morning, I want to say, Tuesday morning or so. And then Rory, came in, flew in, or yeah, no, he didn't fly in, but, came in on or maybe this afternoon to TPC Sawgrass and stuff. So again, kind of up in the air. His status pretty much up in the air as of now. Other notable storylines. Mr. Scotty Scheffler. Scotty, in the last few weeks, has played some of the worst golf we've seen from him in quite some time. Now, also in the last few weeks, he has finished T3, T4, T12, T24, which is better than pretty much everyone else still on the PGA Tour. But I think it was the iron play at Bay Hill, which is really scaring some people currently, because it was not good. First time he's lost strokes on approach since 2024 BMW. So that, not good. I mean, that's pretty bad. Now, was this a fluke? Because after that 2024 BMW, which he lost strokes, he went on to win the Tour Championship the next week. He won the Hero World in December. So he won back-to-back events. And then the last time he lost strokes on approach before that was the FedEx St. Jude in 2022, which he was cut, and then he finished T3 at the BMW and T2 at the Tour Championship. So he historically has bounced back when he's had really bad iron play weeks like last week. We'll see if that happens this week. I think Luke mentioned it last Sunday. If Scotty wins this week, he's not going to be surprised. It's definitely a slower start maybe than what we were used to or what we wanted to see from Scotty Scheffler, especially after he started off the year winning the Amex. I mean, at that point, he wins the Amex. We're thinking like 8-9 wins on the year for him. But since a couple of close calls at Phoenix and at Pebble Beach, was not in the mix at Genesis, was not in the mix at the Arnold Palmer last week. So definitely still some things to work on. Also, his putting last week as well was a pretty big issue. Something to monitor. Again, we're not ring the alarm bells or anything. This guy is still the number one player in the world and will be for the foreseeable future. Just something to monitor. I think this week for him is a pretty big one on what we see. If he finishes T20 or so again this weekend, I don't know where things stand at the Masters. Now, I would still say he's the favorite for the Masters, but still some questions arising for Mr. Scotty. So those are kind of the two big names, the two big storylines heading into the players this week. Luke and I both did our predictions. Luke, again's not here, but I will release the board now. I am up on Mr. Luke Brown by about $1.2 million. A big week for him last week after I, had to deal with some issues. Was not able to pick a player in the top 50. And then the rest of my guys, I picked Rory as well in my past champions category. He, of course, WD'd. It was not good. But we've got some stars on the board this week. And in my top 50 category, I went with Russell Henley. I think Henley is one of the most underrated golfers in the world right now. And me and Luke both kind of doubted him before this season. We both said he was a guy that was going to fall out of the OWGR top 10 by the end of 2026. And he may still do that. But right now, he is hitting the ball very, very well. And when I mean very well, you look at his performance last week, T6 at the Arnold Palmer, of course. He gained about 1.5 strokes on putting. And then the Amex T8, he gained over 2 strokes on approach that week. So, he's had a couple of not so great performances, was cut at the Genesis, for example. But I loved what I saw from him around the greens and putting last week. And if he's just accurate off the tee, which you need to be here at TPC Sawgrass, I think he's in for a big week. Luke went with Andrew Novak in his top 50 category, which kind of surprised me. Novak is someone that has not really played amazing to begin 2026. A T7 at the Farmers, but in his last 4 events, cut, T48, T47, T38. When Novak misses the cut, all I'm going to say is Luke's going to have to explain himself next week. He won't be on the recap episode, but he's going to have to explain himself next week when Novak misses the cut. All right, not top 50 category. I really like my pick here. I'm going Brian Harman. Historically, he's played really well at TPC Sawgrass, including a T2, 2024, I think he was a T2. Yeah, 2024 was a T2 for him. He gained about 2.5 strokes on approach per round, of course. So I was pretty confident there. Now, he hasn't had a great track record the last few weeks. Solo 50th at the Arnold Palmer, T50 again at the Genesis, a T19 at Pebble Beach, but that was his best performance so far here in 2026. He was cut at the Phoenix, cut at Amex, T61 at the Sony Open. So not great play to begin 2026, but I feel like it's just something about TPC Sawgrass and Brian Harman. I'm gonna put my trust in him here. Again, if he misses the cut, I'm gonna have to explain myself on Sunday night. But I have a lot of trust in Brian Harman to kind of maybe be a first-round leader out of the gate, kind of explode out of the gate, and then make me some money. Luke went with Michael Thorbjornsen, Mr. TGL. Thorbjornsen is it's going to be interesting for him, I think, because he's a young player that is really, really good and hasn't, showcased it in TGL, but hasn't really showcased it yet on the PGA Tour. He has not won a PGA Tour event yet in his career, but he's had multiple top fives in the last year or so since like last April. So it's going to be interesting. T3 at Phoenix, T33 last week at Arnold Palmer, was not accurate off the tee, lost strokes on the tee last week, but he's gained strokes in every other category. So we'll see what Bjornsson can do for Luke. Past champion category, Luke went with Scotty Scheffler. We already talked about Scotty. I'm going to explain why I picked Ricky Fowler over Rory McIlroy here. Look, am I afraid Rory's going to WD? Yes, I am. But at the same time, I think Ricky has been playing some really solid golf as well over the last few weeks. A T9 last week at Arnold Palmer, he gained almost a stroke on the tee last week, and he gained strokes in every category pretty much. His around the green play hasn't been great this year, but he's putting the ball really well. He's gained strokes putting in all but one event. But yeah, in his last 4 events here in 2026, he's gained strokes putting, gained strokes on approach in every event since the Wyndham last year that he's played in. So again, his iron play has been phenomenal. It has been. And you need that to be phenomenal at TPC Sawgrass. So that's why I went with Ricky Fowler here in the past champion category. Luke is going with the hot hand in the one and done. He's going with the reigning Arnold Palmer Invitational champion Akshay Bhatia for his one and done pick. I'm going to go with Colin Morikawa, who I am very confident Colin's going to win this tournament. I think Colin should, if you haven't used Colin in a one and done yet, you got to use him this week because his iron play has been the best of anyone here in 2026, in my opinion, so far. His last 3 weeks, a win at Pebble Beach, T7 at the Genesis, solo 5th at Arnold Palmer. I think he's guaranteed a top 10. I think he is guaranteed a top 10 finish at least. And I would say he is the favorite to win this tournament just because of how well he is playing right now. If the putter stays average to slightly above average, we're fine. Because his approach play and his oh my goodness, his strokes gained on the tee and what he's going to be able to do with the drivers and his woods and his hybrids and things like that, that impresses me a lot. And I think that's going to help carry him to a victory. So if I had to say someone who's going to win this tournament, it's Colin Morikawa, and that's that. So once more, my picks this week: Russ Henley, Brian Harman, Ricky Fowler, and Colin Morikawa. Luke goes with Andrew Novak, Michael Thorbjornsen, Scotty Scheffler, and Akshay Bhatia. But that'll pretty much do it here on Sunday Flags, or the Players preview episode. A lot to talk about, a lot to get to this weekend. It's going to be a lot of really fun golf. Again, if you want to follow the pod at Sunday Flags Pod, wherever you get your podcast, and on social media, if you want to follow myself at Mason_Kinnahan, I'll be tweeting stats and just about the players overall throughout the weekend. So keep an eye out for that as well. But yeah, that'll do it here on today's edition of Sunday Flags. We'll be back on Sunday. See you next time.